turn this thing around, or we'll lose. This warning, we're past the point of no return. It's the end.
Happy Sunday, everybody. You are tuned into Sunday Live with Caleb. If it's your first time on the show, feel free to add to the chats. They will come up here if you have questions for our artist of the week. Go ahead and post them in there, and we'll get them answered. That opening track was my new Audio Terrorist single, It's the End. There will be a Caleb version, which is more acoustic, coming out soon. And check it out, Audio Terrorist, on any platform, Apple Music, Amazon, Bandcamp, etc. And look up It's the End, the greatest and latest. That song was written originally for Rock Lotto with Balanced Breakfast, which is a music community. If you are a musician, please do reach out to Balanced Breakfast and join the community. It is a great society for doing live performances, recordings, just connecting with everybody and getting out of the box in these challenging times of COVID-19. Hey, Joe, how are you doing?
Really well. How's things over there in Seattle?
Good. We're now in what I'd call winter, and last week I just wanted to sleep the whole week. We're in the 40s to 50s. There's going to be some 30s later on this week. And as you know, I've only lived up here for just almost a year. And I thought my body had acclimated, but when that drop-off happened in October, my body was like, oh, it's supposed to be 90 degrees this week, not 40.
It's been a heat wave down here in Berkeley. It's cooling off a little bit. It's going to continue warm the rest of the coming week, but it was a heat wave last week. And I have never consumed so much Gatorade while on the job and whatnot. Going to bed quite early, windows wide open in the middle of the night to no avail. It feels a bit cooler now, but that's relatively speaking. It's still quite warm and sunny. I'm looking forward to that new moon that's going to come out soon. Last night, I had an actual Saturday night outdoors. The very last night of our Kokole, the famous cafe restaurant, that meeting place, public house where we've all convened and with our laptops and one another for hours on end. It's a wonderful loitering place. I went there with ended up with my club president, Rich Gibbon, and Chris Stellick, another friend of ours from Dickens Fair. And we sat outside of the outdoor seating tables while the UC Theater had live music serenading outside diners from up the street. And it was great and wonderful and bittersweet at the same time. And
I could imagine. I remember going there in the 80s, and that was like, one of my attempts to get out of San Jose suburbia was going up there with a friend of mine, Chris Stroth, and he introduced me to Kokole. And yeah, it was a place where you could hang out and talk philosophy and play games and eat. That was the spot to be.
These places, these cafes, whether it was Cafe Nouveau in San Anselmo, Kokole, or any of the cafes on South First Street, they were like the perfect way stations, almost like a Greyhound bus station for those gathering to figure out what are we going to do tonight, or what nightclub are we going to hit this evening. So when you ran out of nightclubs, the cafe became the destination instead.
Yeah.
And that's where they've come into their own.
Yeah, it's It's going to be interesting to see what comes out of all this because that was a huge part of the arts culture in the Bay Area, and Acoquele was that transition zone between the artist community and the university community there in Berkeley, much like you said in San Jose, First Street and cafes there, is actually where people went and interacted and actually did work and shared ideas. And then, like you said, could also socialize and go out to the theaters or go out to events. It could be a performance art event, it could be a concert event, a movie, something that just had that life to it. And that's one reason why I love Paris, because Paris has historically had a lot of that. Right now, I know a couple friends in Paris have abandoned the city at this point because everything that they loved about Paris doesn't exist right now. And that's happening in the States, and it's a sad situation.
Yeah, there's a cafe in Point Richmond, Kaleidoscope Coffee House. It's a great community center. They're doing what Acoquele used to do. I mean, complete with spoken word, readings, open mic music, all kinds of, even like the occasional swing dance, because the owner, Cassie Cushing, is a Lindy Hop expert, and then we're pretty good friends. But right now, the cafe is open for sidewalk dining or for the patio, which is open in the back. But it's still very limited to capacity to compared to how it was before COVID.
I imagine it's all about of what is your rent and how much can you defer that rent or manage that rent. If you have an opportunity, maybe own the property. You could have limited business just to keep the culture alive and try to get out the other end of this thing. But for folks that have landlords that have to pay their mortgages, this has a knock-on effect.
Yeah, yeah. It just Acoquele was privately owned, but they were losing money, so I think they may sell out. There may be another buyer that takes it over, or it may become another. I don't know what. I could say this: Acoquele itself as a building, it's still pretty valuable. Whatever happens to it, there's apartment development all around it. So I don't know if that building itself is going to be valuable in terms of expanding into condos or apartments, because it's that corner, that intersection is so saturated as it is.
Mm.
So, and at this point, it might even be a historical landmark. So we'll see. I guess we'll see.
Fingers crossed. I know it's one block off of the Berkeley, California University. And so it's prime real estate for student housing, but people have to eat and congregate at some point. That will return, and the race for the vaccine. Well, that's enough about the world woes of trouble. Let's take the opportunity to take a break from all that and hear some good music. And we have a very cool guest this week. The band is called ContainHer, and the lead vocalist, singer, songwriter of the band, April, will be with us tonight. And I would also put artist. She's a singer-songwriter and has an artistic vision for what she is doing. And I got to see her perform at Star Crash, which is produced by the DNA Lounge. And I'm like, I want this person on my show. I so love what they're doing. And I'm happy that she agreed to be here and we can share her work with you tonight. Hey, April, are you out there?
Yes. Thank you so much for having me on here, Caleb.
You are welcome. I'm so proud that you're on the show. I saw you on Star Crash and I'm like, this is one of our people. I love it. I love what she's doing here. We should be on my show, my little weekend show. And I reached out to my producer, Tim and Lahane. And I was like, oh, Tim, do you know ContainHer? And he goes, oh, yeah, she's great. I'm sure she'll do it. No problem.
Awesome. Yeah, happy to be here and represent and have a chat about everything. Things have been strange, but I've been trying to be as creative as possible. So the videos you saw on Star Crash, they were done during COVID. So, yeah.
Wow, I did my last show. I So I came back from Paris, I think like I don't know, last week of October last year. My wife and I bought a place here in Seattle, and I was supposed to be going back and forth between the San Francisco Bay Area and Seattle for the coming year. And well, I landed back from Paris, met some people here, started booking gigs here. I thought, well, I'll stay a little longer. And we did a gig in March, and it was like the next week we were supposed to do like this really big gig in a big venue, and everything just shut down. And I started doing some of these online festivals, and that's what led to this show. What was that transition like for you?
It was harsh. I mean, but like right before the shutdown, I at least got one live performance in. It was in Portland at this really cool goth club, so that was really fun.
Cool.
Yeah, it was a blast. Everybody, there were coffins everywhere, and it was awesome.
Oh yes, my wife and I met at a regular goth club. Well, it's funny. I'd say goth club, but Cat Club in San Francisco. That was been my resident home for a long, long time. Joe knows Cat Club very well, and Death Guild, and all that whole scene. And we met at Strange Love, which is a little more goth industrial. And for you folks that don't know the difference between goth and goth industrial, we're going to give you an education. I'd say if it's a little more mellow and romantic, that's probably on the more goth side. That's not clearly a delineation. And the goth industrial is a little more rock. So you get like the Smiths and, British 80s bands, Nine Inch Nails, Depeche Mode. She's a big Depeche Mode fan, and that's...
I love Depeche Mode. They're a huge influence on me.
I saw you did a cover of Depeche Mode on the piano there. I almost threw that in, and I'm like, no, we're going to focus on her stuff.
Well, I absolutely love them. I should cover more of those songs, I think.
Incredible band, incredible history there. I love... one of the things I'm doing up here in Seattle is consulting with local bands to help them make sure they dot their I's and cross their T's on their publishing and their label and, our contracts right and whatnot. And I keep saying, look at Depeche Mode. They did it right. And so I love talking about them, not only the music, but how they went about being a band in the business. And they did not take on debt. Debt is your enemy.
Oh, yeah. I can only imagine.
Yeah. And let it build. Just take the time and let it build. Everybody up here, when I moved up here, was like, hey, man, can you help me get signed? And I'm like, I feel like I've gone back in time 20 years. I'm like, nobody wants to get signed in the San Francisco Bay Area. They set up their label. They set up their publishing. They get all the royalties all to them. Why would they sign with a label? Why would you want to go into debt? A label is a bank. They loan you money, and then if you spend it on the wrong things, you're in debt the rest of your life.
Well, I'm glad you're spreading the message around about what to do. I mean, a lot of artists are kind of lost at this point with Spotify revenue, not knowing how to manage anything. So everybody's kind of just playing it like a new frontier and, grasping for whatever they can grab. Yeah.
And the historical music business is a tangled web of organizations and relationships. And it doesn't help that the terminology we use in our everyday lives about music is not the terminology that's used in the legal and the business world of music. So I will get asked a question, and it will be, couched in everyday terms. It'll be like, hey, man, who should get the royalties from this song? And it sounds like a simple question, right? But you say, okay, then what is a song? What is the legal status of that? Where do royalties come from? What is publishing? What is selling copies? And then, well, if publishing is from a performance, which seems odd to people, like, shouldn't that be like a songbook I put on my piano? We say, yeah, that's where it started. But because of this, because of that, there's this whole history of how it flowed out organically that leads to terminology that just doesn't align, it's not easily understood.
You should put out a little guide or something. Maybe it would help people break it down.
It's funny because I learned most of what I learned, well, some of it from my mentors in LA or the film industry, but I learned a lot of it by just reading 2 books, maybe 3 books, and knowing a couple websites. So the information's out there. And what I'm finding is that doesn't mean people can digest it.
Exactly.
Song Trust, I highly recommend if any musicians are listening to tonight's episode, go to Song Trust. They have checklists like do these things, do these things. And I know I'm a hands-on learner. I can read and read and read until I do it. It doesn't make sense to me. And I'm finding a lot of my customers are in that position.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Once I do it, then it's in there, but reading it is just part of the process. Has to be done too, but that's just number one.
You figure that, and that's pretty expected, right? You have a guitarist, a keyboardist, you are used to doing. That's how you learn, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm
How
finding, what was that?
I mean, that's how most musicians write music, by doing. They do it, and then they go, that works. Now let's write it down.
And yet the songwriting legal end is like this. I'm sitting with my notepad and I'm writing some lyrics at a coffee shop, and I'm going to take it to the composer who's sitting at the piano writing a melody with a pencil on a piece of paper, and then we're going to stick the 2 together, and then we're going to register our song. And this is how the legal end was designed. It was for that. Well, when I sit down and I just jam and think, am I writing a song, or how is it getting, it suddenly becomes this blurry line between songwriting and music production.
Yeah, I like to do both at the same time. It's my favorite way.
I think that's very common. I think that's how most people write songs today. And the challenge is the royalties from each one of them comes from different places.
Yeah. So I need to figure out a lot. So I will definitely check out that resource you listed.
Sure. Yeah. Feel free to hit me up on Facebook and I'll point you some right directions. And yeah, we got to stick together.
Absolutely.
Well, I have a video here of you performing at Robotica, and you said this was after COVID, yeah?
Yeah. So we did keep our distance, and everybody was tested before, and we were very strict about how it went down, but it was still kind of like a live performance, no audience, just a couple cameras. But it was fun. It actually felt like a real performance again because I had people around me that I was working with. So that was awesome.
Cool. I have a couple questions about that line of thinking, but I want folks to see the video first and see if they get similar impression.
We'll be a master no matter the time, making our strides, and we're about to fly. Hey, I'm breaking out. Are you coming to know where the wonder goes? I'm running. I'm breaking out. Are you coming to know where the wonder goes? I'm running. Yeah, I'm running. Ooh, ooh, I'm running. Ooh, thank you so much for having me here on Robotica. Amazing production by JL Imagination.
So that was Breaking Out. That was a live shot for live, like a live video, but shot in the studio. And it struck me when I saw this in Star Crash. I'm like, this reminds me of the British show Tops of the Pops. You know, where everything was presenting, and yet there's this sort of like. Those videos can be kind of stilted because they're actually lip syncing to the record.
Oh yeah.
And you can feel it. And this I'm watching and it's like this live show, but you can feel that there's no audience.
Yes, I know that kind of sucks, but at least I'm singing live. I'm not lip syncing, but yeah, the energy is not the same exactly. So
The cool thing is your sound has a contemporary and retro component, so that feeling actually makes it authentic in a way.
awesome. I'm glad you think so. I love music from the 80s. I mean, I like to give it my own twist and kind of make it contemporary. So, and this is a collaboration between me and my friend. We call ourselves Cloud Like Steps whenever we work together. So this is what we sound like, kind of.
And so what's your background and how did you come to this 80s? We're going to hear more videos that, you know, show the range of what you do. But I would say, yeah, that 80s sound is, it's there. I'd say some of it goes into kind of more 90s trance influences. But what's your background? How did you start music and how did you get this fixation for 80s sounding electronica?
Well, I think a lot of I mean, you know, a lot of us artists just kind of glom onto the music that we loved when we grew up, and we kind of just bring it all together the way we want to hear it. So I have a lot of influences from the 80s and the 90s because I just love those eras. Like, so I think, you know, you're probably talking about one of the latest songs I did with in that tent scene that maybe you're going to show. I kind of was like inspired by Massive Attack for one of those songs. And, so I like trip hop. I like synth pop. I like, you know, I like melodic music too. So I'm even influenced a little bit by, you know, like the Beatles, because I grew up with the Beatles and ABBA, and, you know, so there's a little bit of that too. It just all kind of comes together. And I think that's what being an artist is like. You come from a lineage of things that affected you and inspired you, and you try to make that come alive more with your own voice. So I think that's how it happens.
How did you start? And by the way, when you said Beatles and ABBA, you had almost a tone of like, please pardon me. I'm a big Beatles and ABBA fan. They have a huge influence. I don't know if I don't know if my case, the Beatles and ABBA translate into what I do musically, but they are a huge influence on me over the years. And the thing I would say, if anybody taught me about the music business early on, it was ABBA, because those two guys who were running the show and how they set up their business and how they wrote their songs for different markets. You know, Fernando's for the Latin American market, and we're going to write, you know, Waterloo for the European market. They were very targeted in what they were doing, and I could hear that in the music. So, go ABBA.
Yeah, I think they're amazing. I love them.
That was my first cassette. Was ABBA's Greatest Hits Volume 2. My second cassette was the Close Encounters soundtrack.
Awesome. That's a great
Which-
soundtrack too.
It's great
John
because John Williams just busts. I like to say that Star Wars was his Aaron Copland imitation, where he's just being kind of like Beethoven, very straightforward. But the Close Encounters soundtrack, he actually unbuttoned his collar and got experimental.
Yeah. I love that that the whole movie decided to make the communication method music. That's just so cool. It feels right.
Everything you see going on behind me with the synthesizers and the lights came from me seeing that ending of that show, that film.
Awesome.
We have a guest. We have an extra guest.
Yeah, that's actually Special Agent Cooper. So the setting is proper for him. He might be making an appearance again. He tends to jump on my back just randomly, just for fun.
Is that his real name?
Yes, Special Agent Cooper.
Wow. Okay.
He has a little bow tie too. It's ridiculous.
And for folks that don't understand what we're talking about, look up Special Agent Dale Cooper on the internet, and the whole world will open up to you. How did you actually, though? So those were your influences, but when did you start sitting down and making music?
When I was a child, I would jam on piano. So I started making music that was completely piano based, and I had a tape recorder, and I actually just would record myself playing, and I would listen back to it. So I kind of began that way, and then over time, I started actually writing actual music when I was probably college, with a guitar. So I had a guitar and I could barely play, and I held it strangely too. But I could still play music, and I wrote some folk songs, and so I began that way. And then I learned from a friend how to do a little bit of electronic production, and I would jump into his studio and play like lead lines on keyboards and kind of learn about how he would make his beats. And so I learned a lot of the basics from him, and then I continued to learn on my own.
Nice. It sounds like you recorded young. You had access to a recorder, and you did the thing that I think is the hardest for all of us to do. You went back and listened to the recordings.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of I think it's a learning process. Yeah. Especially when you're a kid, you're like, how did that turn out? Let's listen. And
I think you're a rare bird in that I think most people record it and go, I don't want to find out. It felt great. I did it. I see this in a lot of performers. I did the show. It was great. It felt great. The audience was great. I don't want to look at the material because it might turn out that I hit a wrong note, and my viewpoint of that experience is going to change.
It always does change too. And, we are our harshest critics, but I think it just helps. It helps to find where we shine and push that more, and, try our best with things by listening back to what we're doing and watching our performances too. Like this one that you just played, that was my first attempt at really like trying to dance and sing, I guess, more actively, because I practiced at home a bit. It's been my like cardio workout during COVID. And it's actually hard to dance and sing on any level. You start getting out of tune really easily, and you start getting winded really easily. So that was my zone. I'd like to like improve on that, but we'll get there.
Like you say, it's a very hard thing to do. And historically in the music business, when you had that much dance moves, you just put backing tracks up, and, people, much like Tops of the Pops or different things where people go, what do you mean they're not actually singing during this? But dude, you go try to bust that set of moves and stay in tune and hit every note and hit every timing. There you might want a little backup support of some kind.
But when you do it right, it's like magic, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's like amazing, and hardly anyone does that anymore. But during the pandemic, I've been watching live performances, and there's some amazing performers from the past mostly, but it's like Bobby Brown. Have you seen his live performances? I know
No.
everybody kind of puts him down for cocaine or Whitney relationship, but he will take a single one of his pop songs and extend it 20 minutes with a live band and run across the stage, jump up a flight of stairs, and just sing his ass off, dance like a crazy person, and like just so like it's amazing the amount of cardio he had. But he was only 19 when he went on those big tours. But
Still,
yeah.
it's a hell of a workout. So I'm going to check it. I remember the name, it was floated across my landscape back in the day. And so I will check out Bobby Brown and his performances.
I'll
at
send you a
19.
link. Then you'll know which ones to check
Okay,
out.
you send me the link of the right video. Well, speaking of, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'm just like, he would do these moves where he's like pretends the song is over and like he's exhausted, and then bust out again. Second round, second wind.
That's a classic James Brown, right?
He must have learned from James Brown. I watched some James Brown too. Man, that guy was amazing.
He knew how to work the audience and make it. And you're thinking about this little tangent here, folks. But when I'm talking with artists and they're like, "Oh yeah, the band and this and that musician that, and we all made this together," I'm like, okay, how much did James Brown do from a quantitative amount in those recordings? He said a few words here and there. Yeah. Get on up. But you know what?
Popcorn.
If it wasn't for those words, the song wouldn't be the song. You put something else on it and a different energy. This exact same music would not be the song that you're experiencing, and that's the difference between a recording artist and a group of musicians in a band. It's the spice, right? You can have you got the meat, the potato, the rice, and blah blah, but then you got the spice, and the spice is what makes it.
Yes. I can't wait for live performances again. I can't wait to feel them, to be part of them, to perform them. I miss them.
How many years did you do live performance under your current brand?
Under ContainHer, not that long, but I mean, relatively long. I think I did my first performance as ContainHer in 2012, I think.
Okay, that's 8 years ago.
Yeah, but I barely did it. Yeah, barely did it.
Okay,
then I
so
started really doing it maybe the last 5 years. Yeah.
Cool. Well, here is not a live performance. This was the one music video I could find, and this is for Seams. I'm going to show that a couple years back, and I'd love to find out the background of this.
It's
There are seams that we're afraid will break. All the borders in the life that we make to just keep us safe from home. Can't you see? I will run to the beat of my heart. I will climb till my bones fall apart. I will reach to the borders of life. I will fall till I finally fly. I will stand with my soul on my sleeve, and I will trust when no one will believe. Can it be I stayed away too long? Did I leave your mind when I was gone? It's not my thing trying to get it back. Can't you see that my heart is intact? I am here, every breath and return. All my seams unravel with yours. I am here, every breath and return. All my seams unravel with yours. All my seams unravel with yours. All my seams unravel with yours.
That was Seams by ContainHer. I love that video.
So glad you love it. It was so fun to make.
I'm seeing all these threads in what you're doing with all these bands that I love. You know, we talked about the Beatles, we talked about ABBA, we talked about Massive Attack. I mean, all
Mode.
these Depeche Mode. And to that laundry list, I will add the following: Goldfrapp
I've heard that one before. Yes.
and Kate Bush,
Awesome. This is wonderful.
Bjork,
Of course, I love Bjork.
Coco Rosie.
They're wonderful.
Coco Rosie might be somewhat of a stretch, but when you get into your upper registers, you have some of that liltiness that one of the sisters has. She has a raspier lower end, but her liltiness reminds me of you, and that video reminds me of a combination of Kate Bush's Red Shoes videos that she did, running up that hill, and all those great ballet works, because she was a trained dancer, is a trained dancer, but she doesn't dance anymore.
She was an amazing dancer.
Yeah. Look at 1978 through 85, 86, up into the Red Shoes stuff in 91. And, it's not too often that you have a performer, singer, songwriter, and dancer of that caliber.
And one that's so creative and I would say unique, strange.
Yeah.
Once I kind of dove down that rabbit hole exploring her, which wasn't actually very long ago, I was just like, my mind was blown. I was like, she got away with this. She got away with it. She was incredibly weird. She wrote that Wuthering Heights song, and that was a hit. It was a huge hit. And beautiful, amazing singer, so creative, so strange and different. And she got away with it. If she can do it, maybe I can, that's always a thing when you find an artist that is very different. It gives you hope.
I would say you are doing it.
Oh,
You're
thank
like, I can. You're doing it. Come on, you're doing
you.
shows.
No.
You're out there. I saw you out there. I asked my producer, do you know of this person? And they're like, yeah, of course. So you're doing it. This is one of the biggest challenges I find in the music, let's call it music industry, is there's the industrial part of the industry, and then there's creative part of the industry. And if we're not making X amount of revenue, we don't feel validated. And I think that's just, when I'm in Paris, I don't get that. No one's
Yeah,
thinking
I
that
love
way. It's
Paris.
like, oh, I'm an artist. Why? Because I do art. Here we're like, oh yeah, I do art, I do music, and I'm a data entry specialist. And in France, they're like, yeah, I'm an artist. And well, how do you pay for your art? Oh, I do some data entry on the side. So that, like, the mindset and the self-identification is completely different.
Well, I consider myself an artist first and foremost. Um, yeah, it's just I think these days with the whole streaming revenue stuff, it just makes it harder to see your impact, or if anyone's listening. It's just different. Yeah.
And entertainers
That's
have
a,
always faced this, right? The classic theater troupe that roamed around in medieval Europe. They were considered vagabonds, vagrants, thieves, criminals, and yet, strangely enough, everybody came out to hear them play. You're playing a gig, and is anybody in the room listening to you? They're out to have a good time, blow off steam, whatnot, and you're a part of that. And you may have a few people go, wow, I love what you're doing, and give you that focus. But you're part of a tapestry.
Absolutely. Yes.
that's what makes street buskers the most honest in a way of the artistry, because they're doing it to please people, passerby, even as they're just passing through the environment. It's not a set audience or a set income. It's being part of that social fabric, that social tapestry.
Yeah, I definitely see my music as I just want to put it out there. If anyone enjoys it, I hope more and more people find it and relate to it. And yeah, I'm just going to keep doing it because I can't help myself. But yeah, I just
With videos like that last one, that would help tremendously. I liked it because it's the timeless artistry and the timeless aesthetic. Abney Park came to mind, even Unwoman. Those are the things that came to mind while watching that video, and it was great. And it's videos like that productions like that will get people noticed online and streaming, and I think that helps tremendously.
well, I hope to do more of those. It's yeah, it was very, very fun. Um, I think it's during COVID, I've come up with some ways that maybe I can get creative with videos. So you'll be hearing from me and seeing from me.
Yeah, that's the necessity of COVID, is having to be very self-sufficient in your production. But the benefit of being self-sufficient in your production is that you're doing it and no one else is controlling it for you. No one else can take control and ownership. You have hands-on, you have ownership of it, and no one can take that from you. It's least of all any bean counter from a record company that says you owe them money for stuff that you're doing.
Yeah, I haven't dealt with that yet. And I don't think I'll take that path ever. But I want to be unique.
You don't need to.
My thing.
It's an interesting mythology. Again, I'll say it. Traditional record labels in the past were banks. They loaned the artist money. I got signed. I was given $1 million. You were entered into a contract where you were given $1 million loan that you were required to pay back. And out of all the profit of your work, you got 5% of the money, and you had to pay back 100% of the loan.
Ooh. Well, let's hope
That doesn't sound like a good place to me. You would have done better to go to a bank, get the the $1 million from the bank, go do the thing you're going to do and pay the bank back, because at least you're getting 100% of your income. So I'd say, like, setting Bandcamp. I love Bandcamp.
I love Bandcamp.
Because Yes, people have to come find you. Yes, you have to direct people to Bandcamp. But when you buy music on Bandcamp, when you stream music on Bandcamp, majority of the money goes to the artist.
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't
I'm
you think that I mean, I actually think all artists, we should all band together. And I came up with the hashtag, but nobody's using it. Bandcamp first, because I feel like every single and every album should be on Bandcamp before Spotify, before iTunes, before any other place, to allow supporters to support. And that every artist should take that stance, because Bandcamp really is working for the artists. They're also a profitable company. They're doing a good job, and they're also staying afloat. So, I think they're doing it right. And people should, I think they're actually getting more press and more play and more recognition since COVID. So I hope it continues.
Yeah, the LA Times just ran an article on them about how they're the new stars of this era with providing music. So for folks that don't know what Bandcamp is, Bandcamp allows artists to put their music up and sell CDs, downloads, streams, and you pay. You listen a couple times and they'll say, hey, open up your wallet and pay the artist if you like what you're hearing. And when you pay it, most of that money goes straight to the artist. It's not going to a record label. It's not going to a marketing agency. It's not going through all these middlemen that nickel and dime the process so that the artist just gets a few cents on the dollar. And this is what iTunes used to be. iTunes, again, Apple took 10% off the top and gave 90% to the artist. Well, iTunes is dead, folks. Downloading is dead. And everybody's moved to streaming like Spotify or YouTube. And guess what? They're not paying the artists. They're not. That's just the reality of it. Is
a lot of people just still don't understand that exactly, because they're paying a membership fee and they're like, well, how are they expanding? I think the normal listener doesn't understand exactly what's happening.
Sure, and then they don't see the balance sheet that says I played this song and I gave the artist 0.0000000001 cent for something that took a year of their life and all these investment of money and these companies. Their argument in the beginning was, look, we're creating a new platform, new technology. We are not profitable. We don't want to fold. We want to be there for the artist long term. So cut us some slack. We'll pay the artist a little bit of money, and then over time we'll start paying them. Well, when they got the push to pay more a year and a half ago, guess what? They countersued. And it was
on top of that, yeah, now they've created this culture of like super curators in Sweden or something. There's random people that decide who gets to listen to what,
Yes.
Everybody's trying to pawn their singles off to just some people that just randomly selected to be the curators of taste. And that doesn't seem right,
There's a lot to... Yeah, there's an interview with the CEO of Spotify that's very, very telling that came out, was it last month? And it's a mindset. It's a mindset that content creators, they're all just doing this for free anyhow, so they should be happy to get what they get. And I think it's also created a culture. I was part of the download Napster culture. I was there doing it. I was like, oh my God, I get the entire discography of this band for nothing. Woo! Back in the day. And, now I know what I know. I go, oh shit, the reality is that stuff costs money to make. And I would like to help feed my artists. I like to help feed the people so that they survive and make more music. But we are living in an era where music has become accepted as free. I also help a buddy of mine with software, the software I hooked you up with. And I get this all the time. There's so much shareware out there that is so powerful. People are like, why should I pay for software anymore? And, my buddy is here working like 24/7 a week to create this software. And he's like, do they not know I need to eat?
And yet there's still more of an understanding that there should be a price on tech than there is an understanding for a price on musicians, which I think one of the British main parliament members or something said they should get other jobs. They should look at and then they put out an ad with a ballerina saying maybe her future is in cyber or something. Did you see that ad?
No,
It's
I did
really
not. It's
bad.
offensive. It's offensive.
This is ballerinas trained their entire life. They train. Most of them are homeschooled. They have aches and pains as teenagers in their bodies. They're so
This is
trained.
football. It's like telling a football player, "You got a brain injury? Just get another job."
Yeah, it's very
What?
sad that
We're
official
being
government would put out an ad like, "Please get another job," or "This girl's future is in something else now."
one of the running jokes is, what would COVID look like if all the musicians had stopped making music for a year? Like there was no music available. The whole industry had just shut down and there was no way to listen to music for 1 year. People would go crazy.
People lose their minds. Yeah, music, art, fiction, all kinds of, all the Netflix that people are watching every day during COVID. They were done by, it's like culmination of artists right there.
And a lot of people who only experience pop music or TV shows don't recognize that everything you're seeing has been through years of filtering in the arts community. In other words, someone painted a certain way and they spent 10 years perfecting that little thing, and then that became another thing. And then a pop artist will borrow from the arts community. Madonna, Kate Bush to some degree. It's this distilling, David Bowie, distilling what is boiling in the arts community and putting it in a pop context to deliver to folks. Well, if that boiling in that community doesn't exist, there's no resource, there's no raw material for that final product that you see. So, yeah.
I know.
I'm on my high horse here.
No, I mean, everybody can kind of see what's happening to music. I'm glad that there's still independent artists like going for it no matter what. But it's tougher to see what gets celebrated in our culture and how it's kind of now become a distillation of corporate interests. Like I think certain things, if it's proven to sell, then more independent artists are trying to sound more like that, and it's kind of sad. Yeah.
I think we go back to, we said in the beginning, ABBA. ABBA
I
was
know
trying to
they're a
sell.
pop sensation.
And the guys, Benny and Bjorn, they were, saying, "Hey, could we write a country song?" I don't know if I had this box set that had, I think it was like 4 different CDs, and it had like their 3 general eras of their career, and this 4th CD that was all these extras. And I was just blown away. It's like, it was a song called Santa Rosa, like Santa Rosa, California. I'm in Santa Rosa. And it was just like, and it was like, they were like, oh, there's a market for this country sound. So let's do let's create all these different genres and see what sticks. So I can appreciate the business side. Mm-hmm. And for me, a corporation is just a legal entity. We're in America. You're a corporation. I'm a corporation, right? Because corporations are people, right? So legally, it's just a protected person. So why not we all become corporations, and we just have a staff of 1. And guess what? The profits don't get diluted through the chain of staff.
You're seeing it in a more positive light, so that's good.
Well, I'm helping people. One of the things I do is help people kind of say, look, if you want a different social organization, you have to go to a different country that has that different social organization. But if you're in the United States, at least understand how the United States works and how you can approach it. And David Bowie's a big hero of mine.
Oh, I love him.
Rest in peace. And what did he do in the late 90s? He started a credit card, the David Bowie Visa.
Wow. Smart.
And then everybody was throwing all their stuff for free on the internet, and he started BowieNet, which was a members only website. And he said, look, this is doing business, and I want to get payment, and this is how I'm going to get payment. And even by the late 90s, he said, the game's over. Selling music? I'm not selling music. I'm selling access to me. I'm selling community. He was saying that in the late 90s.
That's exactly what he did. Yeah, he's amazing. So creative and so intelligent. And so he applied it to all the facets, of life.
And by the way, I already kind of knew you liked Bowie because I saw the little worm from Labyrinth as one of the pictures on your Facebook, and I'm like, she likes Labyrinth. And when I saw that video, the Seams video, I'm like, the ballet, the end sequence with the party, with the dance party. I'm like, oh yeah, there's these things in there. Anyhow, I can talk and talk and talk until the cows come home, but the people out there probably also want to watch some more, see some more video and hear some more of your music. So this is a clip. It was the last song you did on the Burning Man video. I don't know what the name is. Do you know?
Last song is Shine, I think. Yes, and that was written and arranged and composed by me.
All right, this is Shine, and this is ContainHer.
It's just another time to sit by my side. I feel the rain, but I don't mind. The east wind and a quiet repose. I walk my way through the night. You stop that and you rewind time. You stop that with your ancient eyes, and only the moon knows, only the moon knows your secret mind. You're far away, come back to me. The rain falls, the rain falls, the rain falls. It's just another time to sit by my side. Feel the rain, but I don't mind. I don't mind. I don't mind. It's the wind and a quiet repose. I walk my way through the night. With every moment inside, the past is washed away, and the present is my season, So let me live today, for it's gone before it's gone away. It's just another day to sit by my side. I felt the rain, I don't mind, I don't mind, I don't mind. I felt the rain, but now it's time to shine, shine, shine. Thank you so much, Burning Man.
That was Shine by ContainHer. So, when did you first start referring to the band as ContainHer, and where'd the name come from?
So ContainHer is my moniker, but I often play with bands too. And I first started using
That was Shine by ContainHer.
I first started using that name back in 2012 when I started collaborating and recording and stuff. So yeah.
Very
And
cool. I really like it. When I was in art school, I would use word arrangements like that.
exactly, it's like a 2-word poem. I think it is.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that. Depending on who hears it, they get different interpretations of it. Like, am I a prisoner? Am I incapable of being contained? It all kind of depends on who's interpreting it. And yeah, I just like the idea too of like when it comes to music, it's like we're all trying to capture the muse as it comes. And so it's kind of like, I'm like an entity of starlight for this moment in time, and so I'm just contained for a second, and this is what I'm sharing.
Nice. I love this track by Black Alicious called "The Craft," and he's talking about that feeling of you're a vessel,
Exactly.
a blessed vessel, and this stuff comes in you and it comes out of you, and then you give it, and then you're blessed when it connects with other people, and that energy comes back to you, and there's this humility of taking that energy and using it to make the next thing and give again and create this cycle. Tori Amos talks about this wheel of energy as a creator.
Yeah. It's a wonderful thing, and it's almost like I'm always like scared when I approach a new song that I won't be able to do it. Strange, but I get that fear sometimes, and then I get in flow, and there it comes. And it's the most wonderful feeling in the world for me is when the lyrics and the melody have been finished. I don't know, it makes me sleep well that night.
I'm the same. I've been very blessed through. Do you work with Balanced Breakfast? Are you a member of Balanced Breakfast?
I'm aware of them, but I don't frequent their meetings. I should. I haven't. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm the Seattle Balanced Breakfast rep, and I've been co-hosting the international bi-weekly. Stefan Aronson is the creator of Balanced Breakfast. He says he's a co-creator. He's the grand poobah, and
Yes.
And he's just such an outgoing, incredibly connected guy, and I just got a text from him. I don't know who he was, and it said, "You want to be in a band?" I said, "Sure." And he's like, "Okay, you're in band number 8. Go write 3 original songs. Here's your list of your bandmates." And you're like, "Whoa, what just happened to me?"
That's awesome.
And that one of the people in that band that was the last, I think, the most recent Caleb single, "Rise Up," was done with Tim Lehane, and he's now my producer. And it was just because I said yes, and that community is so. It seems so casual and normal, like every community should be like this, and yet I go to other communities and they're not. They're either there's either kind of just a hunger thing, like when you can get my next, could you get me my next ticket? Yeah, or it's very structural. I don't know. It's just I highly recommend. I will.
Well, I have met Aaron. I was on Balanced Breakfast podcast with them not too long ago. So
oh, okay. And you met Justin of Great Highway?
Yes, he's so great. Yeah.
Yeah. Youjustin was on the show a couple weeks ago.
I think what you're talking about isn't that what's great about being a musician as you go through your life? It's kind of like you're like children in a way. You can play with anyone, right? So throughout my life, I've had like, you kind of stumble into things and you just end up playing, and everybody just ends up playing. And I loved all those moments I've had in my life where you formed all these like connections and friendships that, they're not based on anything but just play and like living in the moment and then enjoying that. And then, yes, you refine things over time once you form a band, but it's like, it's an interesting society, isn't it? You know, like I kind of feel like smokers used to have that society too. They like run into each other at a park bench and they'd share a smoke or something. But yeah, musicians, it's like almost like children. It's like, hey, let's play, you know. It's a totally different
I
thing.
now know what you're talking about, and this might seem like a shock. I did choir singing from 4th grade into university, and during that period, I had that feeling. Well, all getting together, we're playing and learning. I had put out with Audio Terrace what started in '84. I started putting out albums. They were fairly experimental sound collage stuff, more like Negative Land, and then by the '90s were more rock, goth, electronica. I've been putting out albums for decades, and it again, when Stefan had me do Balanced Breakfast was probably the first time I felt what you're talking about.
Oh.
And
Well, I
so
think,
for me, it was like, oh my God, this exists, and I'm allowed to come play.
well, I went to school in Santa Cruz, so maybe that's why. I don't know. We would have sessions where I'd go to a house and someone would start banging on a kitchen pot and everyone start grabbing things. And, you know, over time we'd end up in the bathroom going, oh, like, you know, making like chants together that echo through the night. And yeah, there was a lot of play there, I think, that kind of began my journey, and that was fun.
Now that I say that, okay, in the formal band context, it didn't happen until 2-3 years ago with Raccoons on the Moon and the single that became a Caleb single. And it was, you know, a live band where I was, you know, singer, songwriter, and improvising. And it was so liberating. Before that, everything had been constructed in the studio. Or the couple times I worked with a live band, there was a band version of Audio Terrace for a year in '91, and almost nothing came out of that. Tangible, you know, some scratch recordings and whatnot. And every time I tried to form live bands, they just fell apart and people didn't show up. And it was like, you know, so for me, I was like, okay, let me just go away with my Legos and do this thing. And then I will put together some, okay, we have a gig booked. Great. I'll call a few musicians. We'll play backing tracks. You can just play your bass on top of the backing track because it's already there, just so I have a body on stage. You know, it's kind of the approach I ended up taking because the musicians I was encountering were so unreliable. But in the arts community, completely different story. Exactly what you're saying. We get together and someone's banging on a pot, someone starts doing, there was this feeling of play and the feeling like nothing is wrong. But with musicians, I always felt like everything was very prescribed. And
Well,
you know,
I've been the prescriber at times, so I've had both. I just do also enjoy that there is that element. So
cool.
because you know, there's also joy in like finally crafting something, right? So there's like two sides to this coin.
True. Well, we're going to get into the art side in the after party because I have a completely different video to show. But it is timed for the weekly Mystic Moment. So I'm going to lay that on, folks, and we'll be right back. Hey, everybody. It's your Mystic Moment of the week. The theme this week is Recharge Yourself. Artists, musicians, people who are trying to make money in COVID, all of us are working. And sometimes it's very hard to step away from that and say, I'm going to allow myself to sleep in today. I'm going to allow myself to just dine on Netflix or YouTube. It doesn't have to be those things. It could be, I'm going to allow myself to explore this new keyboard that I have. Or it might be a very old keyboard that you never took the time to learn. Find whatever gives you energy. For some folks, watching 10 hours of YouTube is going to help recharge you. For other folks, it's just going to drain you that much more. Find things that recharge you. It could be gardening, something in these challenging times to take a break from doing or feeling like you're doing into simply rebuilding that battery. If you're an extrovert, these are particularly challenging times to recharge yourself. Go join a group like Balanced Breakfast, some online community where you're engaging in folks online and recharge that battery. Okay, so that's your assignment for the week. For folks tuning in, my name is Caleb, and you're watching Sunday Live. If you have comments for our guests, any questions, we go ahead and put them in the chat here, and we can get them answered in the after party. Otherwise, I'm going to keep asking the questions I feel like asking and showing you videos of this particular artist. Our guest this week is ContainHer, and we are now moving to after party. This is the after party, where we explore different sides of the artist, or we just unbutton our collar and chill out, and rather than setting expectations about entertaining all you guys with fancy music videos, maybe we'll show something a little more artsy, dig a little deeper into our conversation. For me, I thought this the after party content would be great to show the video you did with the dance troupe.
Oh, awesome. Yes.
Right.
Lauren Haynes.
It's a less polished, a little longer to watch piece, but it shows this collaboration you're talking about.
Oh, yeah. That was extraordinarily fun. That whole concert was. And it had many moments with, we had different dancers that came in, and we had Peter Colclazier, who opened with piano and ballerinas, and it was just loads of fun.
Now, did they practice to the music in advance, or was this improv? How did this work?
Yeah, they did practice. I gave them the track to choreograph to, and this is Lauren Baines' modern dance troupe. And a lot of her choreography has moments where they can spontaneously do things, but they kind of like click with each other the way a musician would. So it's a bit of both.
Kind of like jam band, some framework, and then there's like the moments of jamming.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. All right. Well, what was the name of this piece?
This was Distill. Yeah, and it was from my solo album, Shout Through the Void. This one was highly influenced by Depeche Mode for me.
Maybe that's why I connected with it. So, folks, if you would like to support ContainHer, please go to Bandcamp, look it up. It's the word contain and the word her stuck together with no space. Check it out. Stream her stuff. Kick her down a dime, man. I've seen people pay less for the music that they love than the parking meter. Come on. You got $1 in your pocket. Drop it in for an artist. I'm being a little more heavy-handed this week on this topic, but seriously, I know you got $1. So,
well, one thing I'm trying to do to incentivize people is once I hit $1,000 on any of my singles, then I put them everywhere. So all streaming will have them. So I hope that helps.
Unlock ContainHer. Put in the $1, put it in the meter, turn the little ratchet. Okay, now you swipe a card. Whatever. You can swipe a card online too, and support your artists and help them go global. was a live performance of ContainHer with a dance troupe. So how did that project get started? What was the name of the dance troupe again?
Lauren Baines Dance Company.
Lauren Baines Dance Company. And where is Lauren Baines Dance Company?
Lauren Baines and pretty much everyone that you see on the stage there, they're all San Jose artists. So yes, there's even a guy on conga in the back. There's a bunch of collaborations happening here on this stage. So
I was wondering, the guy on the congas, like your regular lineup doesn't have congas. I'm like,
nope. We're like, hey, Daniel, you want to join us on congas? He's like, of course.
cool.
So it was a kind of a fun, very, very fun thing. Yeah.
And where was it filmed?
It was filmed at the Mexican Heritage Theater. Have you ever heard of that? It's a really nice set.
I'm going to show my age here in that I grew up in San Jose, and when I grew up in San Jose, there wasn't any arts. There wasn't any music. It was a desolate wasteland of suburbia. Downtown San Jose was abandoned, and I would go down to my university classes, and friends would hang out. We actually had a cracked out house called Biohazard, where we had house parties, and that was the closest thing to the arts in downtown San Jose. There were no live venues for artists and whatnot. There was Laundry Works that was, I think, a legal kind of more punk band, kind of more like Gilman Street Project, and there was Cowtown, and that was about it. And so I got to experience the renaissance of downtown San Jose when light rail got put through. Clubs started opening up. First Street got reconverted from porn theaters to a cultural mecca. That's all literally that corner. There was a club. It's now the Usual. That was called FX, and that's where all of us alternative people would go. Then you had on the other north side of St. James, you had the San Jose Oasis, where definitely Joe went, and that was the beginning of it. And then that little corner where the Usual is and whatnot. So you had Camera One had opened up in a shoe store, and then what became the FX had been the bigger adult theater, and then what's across the street was an adult theater, and then the other club that opened up on the other side above the Speakeasy. I don't know if you know that area, downtown San Jose.
About the Speakeasy that exists now?
Well, a year ago, that was downstairs. Yeah. So above Haberdashery, that was all adult theaters. Like when I started university, that was that you had Original Joe's, you had the People in the Halfway Houses, and three porn places, and that was and the Camera One, which was in a shoe store at the time. That was it. It was pretty desolate and bleak, and I just love hearing you say this was in San Jose.
Yes, it was at the School of Arts and Culture, the Mexican Heritage Theater there, and it was really, really, really fun.
And where is it located, map-wise?
So that is kind of more, what is it on? It's not quite downtown. It's kind of off the beaten path.
Over toward the Alameda?
No, it's not on the Alameda. It's like, let me see.
Or maybe on the other side towards King, or
like near, let's see.
I'm getting trivia, but yeah, I just love it because I working with Tim 2 years ago, working with Balanced Breakfast in San Jose a couple of years ago, and working with all the artists that are associated with the Balanced Breakfast. I started going to shows in San Jose and the Art Boutique, which is fantastic location. I cannot wait until things reopen. So if you're in San Jose, sorry, what was that?
I hope they're doing okay. I'm really worried about the Ritz and Art Boutique and all these venues they're fairly large capacity. I mean, for San Jose, and I just wonder how they're dealing with everything.
That's right. The Usual became the Ritz.
Is that what okay. The Ritz, I love the Ritz.
It's a movie theater. It was an old movie theater, right? It's on the corner there?
I've never known it as a movie theater. Before it was the Ritz, it was a Latin jazz club, which was really cute. I
Okay.
think.
But is it on the corner on First Street and it's on a corner?
Yes, yes.
And
And
it
it
has
has
a
kind of
marquee.
down marquee letterhead. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So it was an adult theater and then got bought out by this gay couple who were into Broadway musicals. And they called it FX because they said they literally, when they came in, there were all these reels of film that were just abandoned. So they took all the film reels and that made the cocktail tables out of it.
Oh, that's cute. Cool.
And you would come and it would be like all 80s, goth industrial, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden at 10 o'clock, the lights would go down. And all of a sudden it'd be like, boy, boy, pretty boy. And it'd be West Side Story for the next 10 minutes. And then it'd go
Amazing.
back to be, and it would go back to being nightclub. And then at midnight, the same thing would happen. And that was their way of like getting to be doing musicals, musical theater, and having a nightclub. And the weird thing was the dance floor was the orchestra pit in front of the stage. I don't know if that's still the case. It wasn't flat. So if you
Oh, it
tried to,
wasn't.
you were dancing on a curve where the seats used to be in the orchestra pit.
It still looks like an orchestra pit, so that makes sense. Because
Yeah.
there's a railing and then it dips down, and then there's
Yes.
another pit.
And if it's the same layout, the bar is on the left.
Yes. Yes.
And over on the right, there's a little platform that's flat that juts out towards the dance area. And yeah, they just built that on this movie theater sloped floor.
Wow. Now,
Anyhow.
now I know the history.
You know the history. You're in the know. Hey, speaking of
cool.
history, Joe, you're out there.
Yes.
You've been quiet tonight.
No, I've been taking us all in about the San Jose Renaissance of art. But you're saying that there was nothing in San Jose at the very beginning. It made the rising, the Renaissance of the budding artists in San Jose that much more vital and important, because San Jose didn't have the laurels to rest on the way San Francisco did. San Francisco and even the East Bay, because of what they were able to do, people there got very, very complacent and lazy. Whereas in San Jose, didn't have those laurels. In San Jose were people chomping at the bit. You had a lot of restless artists that say, nothing is going on here. Let's get something going on here. That Renaissance, that birth is what, to me, was very exciting to me. And that's what kept driving me down to San Jose versus the south of Market area of San Francisco. And San Jose became very, very vital. San Jose took over the nightlife, when, even before COVID. San Jose was putting San Francisco to shame. I remember being with you, Caleb, when the Ritz was FX, and to dance up storm on that curved dance floor, and even attending Voice Farm at the San Jose Oasis,
Yeah.
and shows like punk shows like Agent Orange at FX just a couple of years ago. And so the thing of the dancers collective, the creative organism of artists, of dancers needing each other, that's this collective responsibility of productivity and creativity, not being consumers but producers. And that's why April, you working with dancers, for example, that's great. You're cross-platforming artistic venues, dance, music, live performance, recorded music. It's fantastic. And that all of you from San Jose is a great and wonderful thing.
Yeah, I think that San Jose is kind of underrated. I think people don't know, and they still think of it as a wasteland, and they still make fun of it. But these are people that don't go there and don't really know, how vibrant the scene can be in the certain places that you have to go, though.
Yes, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool nightclub, punk rocking, motorcycle club aficionado from East Bay.
Swing dancer, science fiction conventions, Renaissance Fair.
In San Francisco. But I would think nothing of dropping everything and heading off to San Jose for a weekend. It's where I met Caleb. It's where Caleb and I would hang out together in cafes and nightclubs, even sci-fi conventions. San Jose has jumped to the fore because all the creative types know how to be restless enough to say, let's not be corked up and be, artistically constipated. Let's come forth with and create. Creativity is communication. It's reaching out to other like-minded people. So you can't not create, because that's just being too stifling.
Absolutely. And I think something that people don't realize is that San Jose has like little communities that all kind of chatter a bit. And so it's easier to reach out to, like, say, those ballet dancers that were in my video. I actually performed for them at the California Theater for their ballet troupe and new ballet school. And we just kind of like, you can reach out a bit and you don't feel like the elitist borders that you would feel in some bigger cities. I mean, San Jose is a huge city, but it feels like a small town.
Rising tide raises all boats, and San Jose became a storm surge, and all the more wonderful for it.
Glad to hear you think that. Yeah, not as many people I run into say that about San Jose.
Well, I mean, San Francisco, we're all talking pre-COVID reality, but San Francisco, you know, is a very old city, and you have so much arts that was there, so much art that's imported. It used to be you had everything from the neighborhoods. Geez, it probably was only 5 or 7 years ago. You know, I'm in the space behind a boot store where there's a community of people having an event, and I'm part of a sort of performance art event related to a party, which is related to a social recognition of key individuals. And, you know, that person's a DJ that has played my songs, and all that very grassroots stuff flowed all the way up to the San Francisco Ballet. All right, this premier place where you're getting a box with the champagne in the back booth, and so there's this range in San Francisco. But the thing that happened over the last 40 years is that lower end of just the art for art's sake or exploration got squeezed, and people left, and they went to Oakland, and I'd say the 90s.
Oakland is amazing these days. Yeah.
What was that?
Oakland has been amazing the last, I don't know, 10 years or so. Real hot spot for all the artists, I think.
I've said this before on this show, and I'll say it again. Oakland is my favorite city in the world.
Oakland is
beating
amazing.
Paris, beating San Francisco. That's a lot, and people just don't know it.
Well, the thing is, there are some drawbacks, as you know. You have to be careful. I did get a bunch of equipment stolen in Oakland.
Okay, fair enough.
I screamed out in the parking lot. I screamed out, "No!" A truck drove by and people laughed at me. Like that just felt like, oh, it's so Oakland.
Fair enough. I say everything I say. I had a window broken in my truck, my band truck, and it has become I'm trying to pick the right word here. It has become a more gentrified mainstream place as well. But part of what allows artists to be there in the array that they're there is that people largely don't know that those communities exist. So that shelters them from the gentrification. And because there's so many tough areas, that scares people away enough to keep that enclave where
otherwise gentrification might take over.
Yeah, well, in San Francisco, south of Market used to be that. There was industrial arts, and Survival Research Laboratory was blowing stuff up, and all just right in south of Market. Now you can't imagine doing anything like that in south of Market. And then that moved down to Hunters Point, and then that area got bought out by the biotech industry, and so you have this sort of pushing that cutting edge arts frontier out of the main part of San Francisco, even though you do have pockets where San Jose, I think, went from where community centers and community hubs started in San Jose that could accept that or grow arts and artists, and where in Oakland was the overflow from that industrial San Francisco arts, to High Street and whatnot. And no, it isn't pretty. It is. You got to be tough. It's a little bit of Detroit. And at the same time, I'm speaking as a male who, at the time when I was living there, had long hair and a goatee. So, and black leather jacket, trench coat. So I probably had a little intimidation factor in return. And at the same time, there were places that you would discover that I've never seen anywhere else in the world.
Me too. Amazing. They had like a little art renaissance for a while, but I don't know that it's still there. But during the art murmur, like that was amazing.
Art murmur. What? Okay, I'm doing the age thing here again. Art murmur. When I first participated,
Okay, maybe it's older than I know.
oh yeah. It was. There were like basically maybe 3 main galleries, maybe 10 in total, a bucket of PBR, and hay bales. And you throw the hay bales on the whatever streets off of San Paulo. You throw the hay bales in the street so that cars can't come down the side street. You put the PBR bucket on the street. Everybody threw $1 in. We're all making custom cupcakes. I mean, it was very, very grassroots. And, okay, the police are coming. We get the hay bales out of the way, put the PBR underneath the hay bales. Hey, nothing going on here. It was so much like that when I first was there and in part of the community. And then I was away from the community for a time. And then I happened to be on a bus going through that area on a night when the art murmur was happening. And I'm like, why is the bus rerouting? And I realized I was seeing thousands and thousands of people and food trucks and art trucks, and the whole San Pablo was closed. And the city had embraced it and decided it was an official thing, and it had become this huge event. And again, I don't know any other city in the world other than Oakland that had that or would have allowed that.
I know.
I was in Paris for Bastille Day last year, and it's big, it's a parade from 2 ends of the town, from the Louvre over to Bastille. And I would say the scope of art I saw was less than 1 month of art murmur.
I still to this day remember some of the art exhibitions I walked in. There was one art gallery that had all this redwood bramble on the ground that you trudge through up to your knees, and people were like passed out napping in the corner, and art on the walls as well. But it's like, who does this? This is crazy. And then I go outside. Yeah, I go outside, and then there's like a train conductor character with like a wagon, and he's like, all aboard, and there's flames shooting out the side of this like little wheelbarrow thing, and people jump in, and we end up going to Kinetic Steamworks from there. And it's just like, where am I? This is a adventure. Totally. Yeah.
There's a restaurant. By that time I was working in the biotech industry and had a healthy income, and I was discovering more upper end, more pricey places than I had when I was just a straight artist. And yet they still had that Oakland arts feel. There's a place called Moi that is like a top end, 5-star restaurant, and it's in a warehouse, and it's industrial art, and it's DJs playing, and I'm having, duck confit with the finest wine. And again, that connection between the industrial arts and the arts community, it was embraced, even no matter what your economic level was. There was a place called Lauren Cafe you walked in, and it was like walking into an Alice in Wonderland world where you were kind of in a Jules Verne novel met with a French, kind of tiled underground, but with thrift store antique couches, and up in the far corner was like a niche that art musicians would climb up to and play shows. I mean, even Paris has some of that, but I've never seen that outside of Oakland.
I know.
Even in the demonstrations that they had over, against the police brutality over, say, last May and June. My last months living near downtown Oakland, my neighbors and I'd get on the 4th-story roof, and we would see all the violence, the explosions, the helicopters. But the next morning, the shops that had boarded up plywood, there'd be murals painted, artistic murals, almost like that, to sort of counteract the damage, shall we say, of the vandalism. And these murals are artistic expressions of the demonstrations of the movement that Black Lives Mattered, of important faces and community and music. And one of the final gatherings down in Broadway was basically a music festival with DJs and very positive speakers, and zero violence and zero cops. Only in Oakland.
I know it's a frontier land, I think, for many things.
Definitely. And, like to your point, San Jose feels safer.
It is safer. Yeah.
Oakland, and depending on where you are, because a lot of people don't realize Montclair is Oakland. Montclair is one of the, upper end communities of the entire Bay Area, and it's in Oakland.
Yes, I know. It's just once you go into the hills, somehow it's different. I don't know. It's just different.
Yeah, and you go down by the airport, and that's going to be that's pretty tough industrial land, and that's where the drug lords reign supreme, and the heavy metal bands practice their music, and so Oakland's a big area and very diverse. I just think that from my experience, Oakland is honest. And when you're there, you're alive. There's no artificial at all. And everybody kind of you get to know the people who are standing on the corner, because that's a paper, slip them $5 and shake their hand. They're going to watch your car, make sure it doesn't get broken into. There's just this interaction and community level. But there's also a lot more you have to learn. You have to learn what are those guys about, and what is this about? And where San Jose, you can kind of just go about your business, get in your car, get in your house, do your thing, and so it is a very different environment. I just found it because I came up in the time in San Jose where there wasn't a lot of arts and culture. You pretty much had Works Gallery, and that was about it. It was a renaissance for me to be in this space where everything was available and happening. And I'm glad to hear that San Jose has become maybe a happy medium between the two.
It is. There's still a frontier land in San Jose, and there's still things happening. I've been part of those things, some of those things. I used to run
underground.
I used to run something that was kind of underground. It was called the Garden, but it was one of the bigger spaces in the Citadel. I don't know if you know the Citadel, but it's an art space. Yeah.
Oh, Citadel in San Jose?
Yeah.
No, I do not know it.
Oh, you don't know about the Citadel, huh?
The Citadel for me means something completely different.
Okay, there's a Citadel in San Jose. Yeah, it's not an S&M club or anything. It's
I'm talking San Francisco. Me and my ex-wife were the house band for Citadel San Francisco. So
yeah, this is different.
Completely different. All right. So Citadel San Jose had space for underground arts.
Yeah, it still does, but it's kind of changed its model. People actually live there now, so it's very different.
Okay. Well, folks, you're getting some insights into the arts community and the history over the last 40 years of the arts community in the San Francisco Bay Area, specifically around San Jose and Oakland. And I think San Francisco is well known, and these other areas aren't as well known. But anytime you have artists and musicians who want to do things and explore sort of the boundaries of what they're creating, you have all these underground communities that you would never know about otherwise. When I moved to the Oakland East Bay environment, I found there was a community on San Pablo that had regular meetings, and you could not walk into it. You had to be recommended by someone who was already a member, and members had to be able to be masters of a stringed instrument. I never knew this stuff existed until I was in the East Bay.
That's cool. Interesting.
So if you like the arts, do go out there and explore. There's probably a lot more going on than you realize.
Yeah, always dig a little deeper. And then it involves like communicating with people, not looking on websites, which is hard during COVID. But you need the inside scoop from people that live there usually.
And you'll have experiences you're never going to have in the rest of your life, no matter how many TV shows you watch, no matter how many albums you listen to and go, oh, I'm into experimental music now. I've gone beyond my ABBA. Now I'm willing to listen to John Cage. And until you physically go to a place where you experience something you will experience anywhere else in the world, because that artist has created an environment where, like you said, you're in a space, you're walking knee deep in redwood shavings, and then you're in a red wagon that's shooting flames out the side, and you're like, I'm having an experience you can't have any other way. You cannot get on a plane and fly to Bali, okay, and watch a fantastic sunset in the tropics. That might be new for you, and that's a great thing to have. But you can do that in Hawaii, you can do it in different places. When you go into the arts community, I mean a real arts community, you're going to have an experience that you will never encounter again. And in fact, because so much of art is ephemeral, you won't be able to. There's my pitch for the arts community.
Yes, I know. And so, yeah.
And I see you as a part of that and as a presenter of that. And that's why I was mentioning Kate Bush and whatnot. So I'm just going to refer to you as the Kate Bush of San Jose.
Oh my goodness, what an honor. Thank you.
Yeah, because I mean, okay, so you don't do the ballet work, but you work with the ballet. You know, you have some Kate Bush moves. Oh, and for those folks that might be listening and don't know Kate Bush, so sorry. Look up "Running Up That Hill." Look up "Running Up That Hill," Kate Bush, and watch.
Oh,
the
they know that song. Everyone knows that song.
I know. But I do think it's more commercial, and her vocals are a little lower. I've heard people that said, this Wuthering Heights thing, I don't get it. She's like so high and squeaky, and like, okay, her early career might not be for everybody, but I think "Running Up the Hill," like you said, is a pretty accessible piece.
Yeah, I think a lot of people know that song, and they know that song maybe more than they know of Kate Bush. I'm just guessing because it made it to the mainstream for sure.
Yeah, and then artists like Placebo did the version. I don't know if you ever seen his version. Literally my hair will stand up on my arms and my tears will come down my face hearing his version. And he's got this weird, funky British voice. It's not a pretty voice. And yet it's just, and the song's stripped down. It's just like single piano chord hits with a drum loop. And oh my God. From your reaction, you've not seen the video.
No, I actually just saw it for the first time not too long ago. Yeah.
The Placebo one?
Placebo one, because a friend said, you kind of remind me of Kate Bush. Have you seen this? And then he went to Placebo and sent me that video. And then I thought, wow, why don't more artists have unique voices these days? Unique voices like his.
I think as someone with a unique singing voice, I went through many, many years of being scared. I'm scared. I want to fit in. I want to make my voice like other people. And it took me a long time to say, no, this is the voice I was given. Go do something with it and be you. Be distinctly you. And for folks that don't know Placebo, he's like, if I only could and deal with God. He's very high.
It's very emotional.
Nasal.
Yes.
But the passion is
emotional. Yes. I think maybe just that era allowed for that to happen. I don't know, because it was kind of in the alternative era, right? Where you had just...
Yeah, I'd say 2000s, but with that connection to the 90s. I wonder if Placebo would have had a career if Smashing Pumpkins hadn't had a career.
Yeah.
Because I can see that linkage there.
There.
Yeah, and people that know me know I've tended to focus more on British music than American music, and that's why, because I find outside of country, pop in England is incredibly diverse.
Yeah.
In the United States, you can have a Hank Williams Jr. voice and a Willie Nelson voice, and so I think the country world allows for greater diversity. The country and folk, Bob Dylan, and allows for it. But as soon as you get to pop in America, it's all about polish.
Well, it's almost the same voice across the board. Like some of the voices are like mimic each other. You can hardly decipher them from each other. And then there's all the auto tuning where the robot kind of touches, and
It's called conformity.
Yeah, and I think the U.S. kind of suffers from that more than they used to. I mean, we started, R&B and soul and like all kinds of stuff started here, like amazing things that the world resonated with, and now we're kind of like, I don't know what happened. But,
I would say that you are absolutely right, but every one of those things, every one of those special, powerful things came from a minority community that was not allowed to participate in the mainstream. And then over time, sort of post 60s and the 70s, was allowed to cross over into the mainstream. And that hip hop changed everything, because suddenly in the 90s, you had we'll get into biology and racism, and I could get on my high horse on all these topics, but hip hop changed everything, because you had boys identifying as white kids doing hip hop. And with the Beastie Boys, suddenly which side of the tracks are you on didn't matter, because the kids on both sides of the tracks were doing the same kind of music.
But they kind of did that with Elvis too.
Change everything. Well, that was, I think that's what Joe is talking about with that, and you're talking about that normalization. Elvis was the sanitization. That was the pop artist who borrowed from the African community.
And he was the one that was able to be elevated because he happened to be white, even though they're amazing.
Yes.
Like Little Willie John had an amazing voice, and you had all these crazy rockers that just happened to be African American, and they didn't get money, they didn't get play. Maybe they were somewhat stolen from. They even had sessions where they'd bring in a doo-wop band, and they just cut the single right there, then and there, and not really give them money for it.
Absolutely, and that was the that's the real history of that aspect of the music business. So I would argue that yes, there is a vital, creative, artistic energy in the United States and throughout the United States history. It unfortunately is been put in these little bottles.
Yeah.
And when someone acceptable can reach in that and pull from that vitality and then package it in a more conventional way, that's traditionally how it's happened here, where, and this happens all over the world, but I just think that in England, because of the Beatles not being from London, the fact that they were not a London band, they were not they weren't packaged, and even when they got packaged early on with the Beatle cuts and the suits and whatnot, they still were from Liverpool. They were still from a working class neighborhood, and they played with it, they chewed on it, and they spit it out, and there was that working class there, I think, created a standard in the UK of kind of busting down noise, and the arts have been more part of their history, and I also, it's like, I think since the 90s that's changed here.
Well, also I feel like I guess I just know my time in like Scotland and Paris because I've only toured there, but I just felt like places in Europe, just people go to see more different kinds of music, and it's part of their like life is like to see shows is more part ingrained in the culture. Like, because I even played at like dinner like dinner places and stuff where it's just part of, like, it's ingrained. You have a stage there, and then you have an underground area like in a tunnel that's dripping with like moisture, and you have like a kind of like a techno electronic scene there. There's just all these like little venues, and people hop around, and it just seems like more like part of their culture to experiment with, like getting into live music of different genres and really enjoying it. Whereas here, I think in at least in the Bay Area, it's more like people will go out in droves to see a recognized pop artist at the HP Pavilion that they already know all the songs to. But how many people actually go to the little shows? And how many venues are there? Like, how many funky, strange venues can you even pick from these days? You know, it's not as much part of our culture. And, you know, I wish that was different, but.
It was different back in the day. Back in Caleb's and my time, there was a feeling that with these underground clubs, that the bands that nobody knew about yet, and then a couple of places like on the Berkeley Square, Iggy Pop would play there, even as people knew him because he cared. The thing about these underground scenes, they became underground. It became scenes where popularity was supplanted by exclusivity. You were part of something vital that was so vital and so important. You couldn't be bothered with that which was construed as popular. And you wanted nothing to do with popularity. You didn't want to go to Shoreline Amphitheater. You could care less. You'd rather go to an underground club like it was like the Sauce Factory in Oakland, or Receiving Studios in Berkeley, or the Berkeley Square, or 924 Gilman, or FX, because these were the places where creativity is being incubated and something new was coming forth, not regurgitated pop, something new that was left of center, and then you could bump start creativity all over again. It was the great reboot, and that's where it was so vital that you wanted nothing to do with that which was popular. It's like you went underground because your scene was underground, and this, seeds grow. I mean, it was a lot like being buried, but you got to remember you're a seed. And well,
I'm thinking of Voice Farm right now because they, more than anybody else in the Bay Area, they spent more money, had a bigger road crew, had a bigger team. We're doing more shows, and they're playing Oasis. I don't know what happened to Oasis San Jose, if it's still there or if that became like an office building or something. But Oasis was not underground. It was a fairly mainstream spot. But the fact that you're dancing on top of a swimming pool and Voice Farm was playing in the next room, talking about human sexuality and pop music, yeah, there was that scene, and a feeling of local arts, creative music, electronic music did exist.
I remember when we saw Voice Farm in San Jose, there was much, again, to the cross-referencing of performing arts. You had people dancing to the song, like "Seeing is Believing." As the song was being performed, you had 3 or 4 dancers alongside the musicians, interpreting the music through dance.
Yeah. They actually had stage risers with up to 8 people, and this is I think we're talking about 88, 89.
Mm-hmm.
And all the performers had BVDs. Look that up online.
What is that?
What was that?
What are they called?
BVDs. Was it basic? I don't know. I don't even know where the name comes from, but it's like the white Heidi-toity male underwear that like goes up to the like the high waist with the like access pocket thing. This was like the generic male underwear. So it's men and women in those, and then 1960s like the white bullet bras, and that was the dancer's uniform. They're like 4 guys, 4 gals, and So that gives you a little idea of Voice Farm, and they were like they were up and coming. They were on the radio, a big label, and then it just like vanished. And I've looked on the internet. There's a few fragments left. So it's always fascinating with the arts community, this archaeology aspect. Right, we have ABBA and Beatles are well preserved, but what about all these other artists and bands who have come?
I know. I think about that all the time. Like there are micro genres that may never exist again. People, especially from the past, like straight before the internet, you probably lost a lot of micro genres that people will they can imagine it, people can talk about it, but no one can really see it. There isn't enough bits and pieces, video footage.
A very good point. I'm looking around because I'm going through the high 8 tapes of my bands and digitizing those.
Yeah, you should do that because people need to see what things were like before cell phones. Before cell phones were like part of the audience crowd, and before.
What you can do, the Wizard on the Stairs video that Tim and I did. Literally, I was sitting there and he goes, "Let's shoot a video in my garden." I said, "Okay, what are we gonna shoot it with?" And he said, "You got an iPhone 7?" He goes, "I got an iPhone 7." I said, "How's the video?" I hadn't produced anything on it. And he goes, "It beats the ass off any camcorder you've ever owned." And we went and shot it. And it's like one of the most professional looking, from a quality standpoint, videos I've ever seen. And it took like a few, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes to edit because the AI, well, the two phones, you upload the files through AirDrop. Boom, they're on the desktop. Final Cut Pro grabs them, aligns the audio waveforms.
Wow, really?
Automatically.
Wow.
And then you literally click camera A, camera B, camera A, camera B. And it's done. And it compiles.
Wow. Wow.
There's no sitting and editing and chopping, all the things that I still do. And I was like, oh my God. So yeah, there's all these bands that had big following. Again, Voice Farm, I think, was the number one arts band in the Bay Area when they were doing their thing. Johnny Belinda was on Live 105, and yet you look on the internet, because they were in that 80s, 90s period, they're almost erased.
Yeah, crazy.
So, kids, you just don't know what it was like back in the olden days.
Well, that's why I'm looking at all the footage. Well, I actually think a lot of music from 88, 89, 90, the performances were really good. They were just exceptionally good. I don't know, things changed after auto-tune maybe. I don't know what happened.
Maybe. Certainly, that Cher song, that darn Cher song, and T-Pain changed everything. Suddenly, autotunes from Los Gatos. I don't know if you know this.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. That's so they were like
Bay Area creation.
Yeah, they were in like the 80s and whatnot, and that sound, the auto-tune sound, everybody was like, as soon as you heard that, you just stopped playing it because it had this artificialness. And Melodyne came along out of Germany, and I think beats the pants off autotune, and that sounds natural and whatnot.
Okay, that's what's being used now, but yeah.
And it's completely natural. You would never know it's being applied. But autotune still has that synthetic effect, which was taboo until they pushed it to 100% with that Cher song, and it became the sound of the song. They didn't like put it here when she went out of pitch or here out of pitch.
That wasn't like Zapp and Roger style where you had to have a thing in your mouth.
Yeah, like Peter Frampton with the they would pipe the output of the amp into it was like fish tank tube or something, and put it in the mouth, and then you wah wah wah. So in some ways, as someone who is fairly pitchy, I'm like, oh my God, my time has arrived. I don't have to worry about, trying to hit every note. What I can now focus on is the emotion, right? And the
Oh,
connection,
but I
because
feel like the true emotion should be there with the full voice. I don't know. I believe that.
I agree, but I
Yeah.
tend to drift a little sharp, a little flat.
Me
And
too.
and when I hear the tracks where I nail every note, they suck. I'm because I'm so focused on making sure the intonation's just right, and I kill the soul of it. And yet when I get a good soul in a performance, there's pitchy problems. So for me, the whole pitch correction thing is a blessing. But to your point, it now means everybody can just go, I don't have to do the work.
Yeah, and you miss out on these outstanding performances, like Bobby Brown 1989 in Japan, where he's like 98% perfect. You can hear the imperfections, but because they're there, it's so real. I just feel like they have to be there, and because then how real it is.
Wow, that's
Exactly.
a very good point. Now everything's so processed, you lose. It's like it's of value to be human.
I think so. That's why I am, just, of course, I don't have a perfect voice when I sing live, but I would never use that technology because I think it takes away from, the possibility of like this kind of artistry that I'm talking about, the way it makes people feel.
Would Bob
Imperfection
Dylan
is perfection.
Yeah,
would
There's
Bob
a big
Dylan sound as Bob Dylan if he was pitch corrected?
absolutely not.
No.
Yeah, like you like, yeah,
Yeah, this sliding between notes is like his character.
absolutely beautiful.
Hi, I'm Bob Dylan, and I will sing a pitch perfect folk song for you.
The two other examples I can think of, the recording of David Bowie's Look Back in Anger, as he's hitting those high notes, you feel the emotion and the intensity, and his voice almost wants to crack, but the intensity is still there, and you feel it once and for all. And as for live performances, I keep thinking of Adam Ant at Live Aid performing Viva La Rock live. The man could not be held down. I mean, the guy's all over the stage, defying gravity, out of breath, and just on fire.
Oh,
That
send me that link after the show. I want to check it out.
it's on YouTube. Adam Ant, Live Aid, Viva La Rock. It is outstanding, and it just everything, even sexy. It's fantastic.
I'm a big Adam Ant fan, and I'm one of the few people who like the Viva La Rock album, but I don't think I've ever seen that.
Oh,
Check it out.
And he's another one of those people. He has times of strong voice, but he's not a strong singer.
No, he on that performance, the Live Aid performance of Viva La Rock. It does it in London. He is all over the stage. He is just it's like a spring heel jack. You can't hold him down, and he is everything. He does one entire song. When he is finished, he is drained, but the audience is just flooding him with applause. And
Oh, I can't wait to see it.
This is, I wish I had learned this secret earlier. I think all the years in choir singing, it was so much about hitting the right note at the right moment that it took me a long time to learn it's more about the vibe and the energy you're giving to the audience and the performance than making sure every note is perfect.
James Brown would agree.
Absolutely.
Get it up. So Sharon says, you have a beautiful voice. I'm looking at the chats right now.
Thank you.
And there's some questions about Club FX. Is that where I had that birthday that year? Yes. Yes, it was. And yeah, some other kudos on your voice and style. You just, keep doing what you're doing, and the words getting out. between Star Crash and folks around the Bay Area. Keep bringing live performance, even if it has to be in a studio environment, to people. Or you did this show. Are you doing some other shows coming up? Give you your pitch opportunity here.
Well, I will be in a little cameo on the next Star Crash, so you can catch me. We did a little fun Halloween cover. Me and Remy from Vice Rain and Leanne from New Spell. So you can check that out. 3 Witches at Work.
3 Witches. Now, when is the next Star Crash?
I think it's the 26th. Let me double check.
I'm literally going to put it on my calendar. If you're like an 80s head, retro head, you've got to check out Star Crash. It's broadcast by the DNA Lounge, and I'm trying to think of the gal that runs Star Crash. I'm forgetting.
It's Remy.
Remy.
And I help with me and Leanne help her. Yeah, and it's a really wonderful community of artists that have been forming for years now.
The whole Star Crash vibe of those videos captures that early 80s vibe, and I watch it, I'm like, oh my god, I remember that because I lived through it, and I could remember what has been lost because this technology was so crude. It's like now everything's so slick that it's a breath of fresh air to experience something that's so raw and funky and kludgy. I just bust out laughing with the whole like 80s call banks for people who are calling in, and they look for like donations.
Yes, that's Jamie from DNA Lounge doing those really cool transitions. Clearly, the guy is a creative, interesting person to have DNA Lounge being the way it is. So
yes.
Sauce in there.
And every time they get to where they talk about who this call center, call in and donate to, they just do this DNA Lounge that is so it is so obvious that someone is dubbing in something that isn't from the original material, that for me it harkens to how AI is making all of our faces, and now they have the whole streaming service that will perfect your face by merging an AI version of you with you so that you literally look more symmetrical during your Zoom calls.
Yeah, I don't
it's
like
so terrifyingly artificial that it was a breath of fresh air to have this crude thing. So I think there's going to be a real hunger for that style of art.
I hope so. Yeah, because like you said, everything is very artificial since Instagram culture too. So many aspects of music are based on what the people look like, and people don't give oddballs as much of a chance. Like in the 80s, you didn't have to look like a supermodel to be part of a band, and the band they all looked weird because they're musicians. It's more about music than anything. But yeah, of course, they wear their cool outfits, but they didn't have to be absolutely like Vogue cover model like status. People, were celebrated for being strange and different.
You have to look like a fashion model to be a news announcer. Now,
do you?
I look at obviously not only from the era I grew up in, but also I like a lot of retro shows. I watch stuff that was made before I was born, and I'm always amazed by you get a star actor and you're like, he doesn't look like a supermodel. And my wife loves like Supergirl and Black Lightning and all these superhero series that now I'm like, everybody looks like every day at the gym and blah, blah, everything, but he looks so perfect. And then you turn on the news and you see an announcer who looks like he could walk on a runway model. And, that Walter Cronkite could not have walked a runway.
No, and yet you wouldn't denigrate him for his
because there was actually kind of an air of, oh, this is a guy who's really thought through what he's about to say and whatnot. Versus, hi, Do you like my hands? I'm a hand model. Now I'll show you the weather. And meanwhile, the war in the Middle East is going very well. You know, you had a bit of that in the weather guy, weather gal thing, but serious news, you know, it was like you went back to normal people. And now, again, it's like fashion model will show us what's going the bombing raid.
Yeah, it's too weird. It's too weird. I hope we change things a little bit. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've noticed that in almost all shows. Like even we have astronaut shows, and everybody's a supermodel as an astronaut. You know, all the smartest people you can find on the planet look like that. Really? I don't know.
I like to say it doesn't leave much space for the rest of us.
Well, I think they just found out that it sells. Like beautiful faces sell. And oh, whatever sells, this will sell for sure. You know, like, oh, well, what about the other parts to it that we? Well, I think that there's going to be a pushback. I hope there is. I mean, we'll see what happens, right?
Yeah, and I hope so too. I really enjoyed a friend in the '90s turned me on to Columbo from the early '70s, and this guy isn't a fashion. I mean, if they redid Columbo today, he would look like he was a runway model.
Oh, we better not. People would get mad.
But that was the thing. He was just a frumpy guy who, and that made the show. And I just see a lot of these shows. And I'm like, come on, show me some ugly people. Come on, show me some people.
I like the Wire because it felt more real. Did you see that?
I haven't watched The Wire.
Ooh, you're in for a good one. Well, if you like that kind of thing, but it's well done.
I have Post-its. Well, what kind of thing is this?
What is it? It's like a cop drama.
All right.
In Baltimore.
Baltimore, yeah, but it covers different facets of the crime in Baltimore from different points of view.
Are there murders?
Yeah, there are murders.
Okay, well then, my wife got me into like Midsummer Murders. It's a British show, so she watches a lot of the crime kind of stuff, and I'm off watching like documentaries on rocket engines or something. But I will see if she knows The Wire, and if she's watched it. If not, I'll watch it with her.
Ooh, you'll love it if she hasn't watched it yet and she likes crime drama. So she'll probably find The Wire to be one of the best ones she's ever seen.
Very cool. And if you haven't seen Midsummer Murders and you like British shows, and you like the exact opposite of the American crime kind of show, it is sober English. The whole thing is understated. Like everybody's just casually talking to each other for an hour and a half, and yet it's a murder mystery.
Wow.
And she loves falling asleep to this. Anyhow, check out Midsummer Murders. I think it ran for 17 years or something.
Wow.
A long time. And it's all about, again, I think what the British do is they do that humanizing. Like everybody's just really who they are. And anyhow, here's my pitch. I've gotten way off the topic of music and your music specifically, which folks that know me know it's very easy for me to do. And it is actually 7:30. So we've been going for 2.5 hours. Probably should let you go. Cool. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. And my mom, who's always tuning in and supporting me and getting family members to watch the show and whatnot, she'll be like, come on, you got to entertain the audience and play more music and videos. And I'm like, but we're having this great conversation. Why should we stop?
I think it's great what you're doing. So yeah, keep it up. I think
there you go, Mom.
If you're entertained, then I think other people maybe are too.
And we'll get this out on rerun, and it may not be a show that hits right up front, but in reruns, we're going to be famous.
Sure. You never know, right? You never know.
You don't. Don't ever know. I did get a text here. Let's see here. Let me check the various text streams. The rise of HD video has been... Oh yeah, totally, David. Agree with you. Um, so David, I can't pronounce her last name. Anyhow, uh, said the rise of HD video has been somewhat involved in the rise of the visual look of the talking heads on television, and it's also important to remember that the news was never a profit center of television, which has changed the exact way. Oh, that's a very good point. Um, news centers used to be, they told the news, they were a cost to the networks. They didn't make a profit, they didn't have to be entertaining. News centers were there to give news, and then the entertainment part of the business provided the income. I was
That
at the
makes
San Jose.
sense.
Yeah, I worked for the San Jose Mercury News when that changed. It was like 98 through 91 or 92. I worked there, and I watched journalism die right in front of my eyes. And it all turned into, you know what? We don't need any of these people because we just cut out the AP report and paste it between the bra ads and, the other commercial material that makes money. And it will go out. And guess what? People won't notice the difference. And yeah, so this is a great example where, yes, my point is news, when you see something that says it's news on TV, most American stuff, it's now for profit entertainment. They are there to
Like
rile
too.
you up, to stir you
Yeah.
up, to make you. Because in entertainment, what you do is you create crisis before you show the ad. Because the
Oh,
ad, yeah, that's why you have cliffhangers right before a commercial in American television. The stings, they
thank
call them. Because people will buy the product more often if they're in an agitated state before showing them the ad. And we did this in drama for decades. Well, now that's what the news channel is not there to teach you news. It is there to get you stimulated for the commercial.
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And he notes. Oh, he knows that the 1976 movie Network predicted it perfectly. So that was I'm mad as hell and I can't take it anymore. I've never actually seen the movie, but I've seen that clip.
Neither have I. I've seen that clip too. Yeah.
So I've got to go back and watch that. And the HD thing is an interesting point because I'll say to Alexandra, I'm like, wow, everything looks so plastic. And, with a lot of these HD shows, I guess, because the resolution's so perfect and the way they light them, everything just seems synthetic.
Yeah, perfect lighting. Absolutely perfect. Yeah.
It's almost like the technology. What was that, Joe?
The holy trinity of movies that depicted the atmosphere of network news is Good Night and Good Luck with Jason Statham about Edward R. Murrow, Network, of course, and The Insider, directed by Michael Mann, about CBS News 60 Minutes and the tobacco industry whistleblower, Dr. Jeffrey Wigand. But those three movies, The Insider, Network, and Good Night and Good Luck, say a lot about TV news versus the network and network income and network influence. Very revealing and corroborates what you have to say tonight.
So this is completely off the music. We're in an after party. We can say whatever we want.
Yeah,
so
sure.
How are people getting any accurate news today?
Well, it's obviously not through Facebook, as people are now beginning to find out. Yeah, I think, you can look at, doesn't Columbia Journal show you like a map of how neutral news could be or how left-leaning or right-leaning, but that in general that there's a slant from
that famous chart where it's a grid with left, right, and accurate, inaccurate. I've seen this where they put the company's logo in that chart, so you kind of get a sense of how skewed what you're listening to. All right, I got to go back to that chart and try to find what's floating on top of the what's at the top that we can reach to.
No, everything's.
I used to say I would watch Bloomberg because at least when you're talking about the market reports and stuff, it's based in reality. It's not based in a drama story. It might be spun, but it's spun based on, oh, this market just crashed in China because, this coal revenue, blah, blah. It's like based on some tangible thing.
Yeah. I think to this day, that's what ends up in the neutral zone is things based on markets. It needs to be accurate.
And it has its own bias and skew, but at least it's, you can't tell a story about the market. You have to be like, markets in China are up today. Well, they're up, right? There's some reality to it. Okay, David is commenting here, getting real news involved, doing a lot of work that people don't have time for because they're too busy trying to survive. None of this is an accident, distraction, policy. Financial news is usually focused on the facts because money is factual, at least. Those working with money. So this is I'm going to flip our conversation on the head and say COVID has been the biggest blessing for people, the American people of the last 20 years in one way. People have time. And I don't think before COVID anybody had free time. Anybody had time to pause, think, do anything other than work and sleep. And right now, people are being forced, tragically. It's hurting financially. It's not easy at all. And there are more people who have more time to participate in civil disobedience, to participate in this thing, or just to participate in anything more than sleeping, TV, and being a part of a corporate structure, which is a fascist structure versus a democracy. So people are starting to kind of connect with the thing that they've been too busy in the past to. I'm going to throw that out to the two of you guys. What do you think about that idea?
I think the people with privilege have extra time, but then other people are still, they might be even drowning more than ever. Like if you imagine that people working at Amazon right now and people that have to keep all the jobs, and it tends to be minorities that are suffering from COVID because they tend to be working a lot of jobs that right now that are not entirely safe. But yeah, for people that have a little bit of privilege, we have this chance to really rethink what we're about. And I've actually noticed even among friends, like I've had some friends, really break it down for me that before COVID, they were just running around like chickens with their heads cut off. And they were not looking at their lives or how they were raising their children or how they were running their business. They were just trying to make money and trying to get by. And now they actually have time to pause. And they've actually, a couple of friends of mine have restructured their businesses, and a couple of friends of mine have restructured their lives a bit. And artists, because we have this innate generative like source within us, I think it has been kind of good for a lot of artists to like get in touch with what they really want to do. And even though it's painful in a way for a lot of performers and especially extroverts who love to go out and to perform for other people and need that energy and that feedback, that a lot of us are still, we have a time to reflect on who we are and what our art is really about and to grow that. And I think that is definitely also happening. And we are coming up with new ways of really strengthening community. Star Crash is a good example, and it's been really fun. But yeah, I think even personally, the beginning of the pandemic, after I got over freaking out and trying to make sure my parents were safe and my friends were safe, I actually enjoyed my time. I got very creative and I started learning new things, applying those things to my craft. And now, where we are now, things are kind of changing again. And now I think I messaged you before our talk. You know, I'm in another like stress zone because I'm going to reopen my little boutique that I had running before COVID. So, you know, everything's kind of coming back in motion, and people are kind of bending around what we need to do to get by economically. And but for the soul, I think it's been good. And I'm hoping that we come out of this better, you know, as a, you know, I don't know what's really happening in America because we're all kind of isolated, and we see a strange political and cultural divide happening because of the social media that is kind of keeping us, you know, in our silos where we just kind of are echo chambers with the friends that we know, and that becomes a truth to us. But I really hope that we can get past that and move on to, like, you know, taking care of each other and the planet, which is clearly not doing well. If you look at all the biodiversity around the planet, you watch the latest David Attenborough release on Netflix, like, we have basically killed off almost every other habitat, and we're about to kill off ourselves if we continue on this road of consumption. And I think that, at least in my little group of people that I know, I think there has been a moment to pause and to really, really figure out what we're about. And I think that can only be a positive thing.
The great American reboot. Yeah,
I hope so, right? We'll see.
My fingers and toes are crossed, and that was well said. I just started watching Planet of the Humans. It started when it first came out, but I got distracted, whatever. So this morning I was finally watching it again, and it stresses that point. Like, the people in the know are like, no, it's over. We're dead. You know, we're just walking dead. And everybody is trying to figure out, like, okay, what can we recover from that recognition? So there's a stark contrast between that and, no, everything's fine here, just let's get back to business. And that is what sparked me writing the song that was at the beginning of today's show, It's the End. I study human history and civilization, and I know all the patterns. I know where this desert plotted, blah, blah. So I know the whole human experiment of the last, 10,000 years and where we're at with that. So I have some context, and I know that even when things have collapsed in intense ways, human beings have squeaked by and over time recovered. And so I want to believe that there is that as an option to where we're at. And yet when I wrote the song, it was very much a sort of, I'm not going to put a happy ending on this. I'm going to tell you, we tried our best, this is where we're at, and guess what, it's over. So the end of the song, and It's the End, I just say, it's the end. It's like, oh, we're talking about this, we're debating this, and I just come back and there's no other verse. It's like, okay, now it's over. And there are times, and I'm sure everybody on this show, listening to the show, has experience where there was something that they experienced that there was no going back. Maybe it was a relationship, maybe it was a job, that when you step past that certain threshold, there is no return. And part of moving forward has to be an acceptance of that. And there's a lot human beings can do. We are incredibly, amazingly creative species. And so when I see, some headline come out, 10-year-old kid in Nigeria figures out way to light homes without electricity, I go, okay, someone made this out of algae. Of course, obviously, it's all about how much do you consume versus how much you produce in any given equation.
Political will too. In the end, it's political will, because
Yes.
no matter, you have geniuses all over, you've got scientists, all are on the same page. You know, the vast majority of scientists are all on the same page about what we need to do. But it's just about, will we do it?
Adversity becomes opportunity.
And people throughout history, change is terrifying. So if you look at southern Iraq, Kuwait, it's a desert now, but that was the cradle of civilization. The first city-states were there. And I love the fact that archaeology has helped us not just look at that superficially and say, oh, I wonder what happened here. Maybe it all dried up, the weather. Well, now we've done enough archaeology and research. We know what happened. They didn't know how to do sustainable farming. They built the civilization, 1,000 years, blah, blah, blah. But they overfarmed in a way that made the soil saltier and saltier. And and then eventually got to a downward spiral where they couldn't figure out what next to do. Boom. Now it's a wasteland. North Africa. So you look at, the combination of environmental factors and human reworkings of an environment. You look at the Maya. You see these repeat things where if you don't have the knowledge of what to do next, that's the end of the party. And yet today, we know what to do next.
Well, that's what's special about today. We have civilization today. We have more peace today. We have more, we have like amazing things that have happened even just in the past, 20 years in America, where we accept people that are gay, lesbian, transsexual, where we like accept women in roles that they weren't able to have before. That, like, all this stuff has happened, recent history relatively to human history, and like amazing scientific breakthroughs are happening like every second, it seems.
Yes.
Like it's just like exponential. We have amazing like things to work with and amazing people to work with. But like somehow we're just run by mobs, and the political will is not there. It does not make sense. But it's like humanity is not logical, and I wonder what it's gonna take for us to really like be able to look at our history and look at all the archaeological findings and know what happened in the past. We know what happened. We know what's happening. We know what we can do. So when are we going to do it? What is that going to take? Why are people fighting against that? It's and why would people, even to the point where like we can't even get past just taking care of humanity. Like, so I don't know if we're going to get to help save the rest of the habitats from humanity, because we're not even taking care of each other. For some reason, there are people that think that the people that are poor deserve to be poor, and people in other countries that are suffering deserve to suffer because they didn't do what I did, or I don't know where this idea came from, but we have a carrying capacity, and we are overrunning the planet in very, like the Western culture in particular. We consume crazy amounts, and it is not right. It's not fair. Yeah. Anyway. But,
no. It's salient points. And I would say that when you said the Western culture, growing up, I could see it that way. I'd say right now it's all majority culture, because China is decimating.
Well, I feel like they've taken over Western culture.
Because they adopted the model that was presented to them, and in the 90s, and Russia was put in this position in the 90s of unfettered capitalism that built the oligarchs and blah, blah, blah. And you see how this backfires when it's not properly managed. And if you want to think about humanity at all, you look at the ghost cities in China. These are like metropolitan cities where there are no human beings. And like total air habitats have all been destroyed to build these highways and freeways and skyscrapers and offices, but there's no people there.
Living there. Weird.
They were built for some potential future is the pitch, but the real reason why they were built was just to keep the laborers working so that they wouldn't question the government, and to keep them having an income, even if the society doesn't need what they're producing. So it is, yeah, it's a thorny thing. And I think you hit on it earlier. You said complete discovery is happening every second.
Yeah,
And
exponentially. I mean,
so
we
if you
might
take,
even be able to undo like death. Who knows? You know, people think that what his name, David Sinclair thinks, you know, we can get up to the age of 125, like in perfect health. There's people doing things that are different.
from my knowledge, you can get up to about the 150 point, maybe 160 point. And yeah, you can totally engineer a healthy life of, you know, a century and a half. At this point, the technology is there or at the fingertips of being there. And at the same time, the energy, you invent that, great. But if you need X amount of energy and you're unable to extract that energy for those systems to function, we all go back to living to about 25, 30. So we're in this weird place where we have an incredible amount of knowledge and technology available to us, and yet it's all in a house of sand underneath. So you talk about longevity. Well, your longevity program requires that you're standing on a foundation.
Yeah, that's not crumbling. Yeah.
And so there's a real weird contradiction to where we're at. But this goes back, you know, you look at the Romans and lead. Let's just talk about that for a brief moment. The Romans knew lead was toxic.
Did they? Wow.
Yeah, they knew it. They knew it. And they still
No.
lined pools with it and whatnot. Why? Because it was easy to mine and it was easy to work with.
Oh no, laziness. Yeah.
So, and someone was making a profit. So you keep doing it. And it's almost like there's a momentum there, an incentive that isn't enough. And you say, okay, some people are going to lose their mind, but you know, they don't live that long, blah, 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 blah. And this is where we get the term Mad Hatter, right? Because the Victorians were curing hats with mercury. And so there's an awareness, you know, when you say Mad Hatter, you're admitting to the situation. Hatters are going to go mad. Therefore, what they're doing isn't good for you. But God damn it, we need our hats. So we're willing to sacrifice these people to get a hat. Right? So you have cases, you know, other corollaries of this. The thing right now is that's so it has escalated to the degree that it's happening so fast and it's such an array that if you don't have time because you're just figuring out how to pay rent, where is that opportunity? And that's why I threw this first idea out that started this section of the show about COVID as an opportunity, is whether we take it or not, no matter how painful it is or not. And I will confess for the first time on the show, I have been impacted financially by COVID. So I'm not talking about this from a sitting on high in heaven space. It has changed my financial life.
Yeah.
Having said that, all this free time, I'm seeing more people engage and think and question and build, have enough bandwidth for thinking about civic duty than I've seen in my entire life.
Yeah. I hope this gives us a pause to change, to make a change afterwards, but we'll see what happens. I mean, you're part of this change. So I think every artist and every person who's expressing themselves can tip things in the right direction if we're all doing it. So, you know, even just how many listeners you have, you know, whether it be today or tomorrow, whoever watches the reruns, if someone hears you speaking in these ways, over time, maybe you will have affected them and they will have affected their friends. And things do happen in strange ways. You know, you might hear from it, you know, a couple of years from now.
The collective whole is everything.
Sorry, Joe, what was that?
The collective pool here for the artists is everything here. Henry Rollins put it best. This is punk rock time. This is what Joe Strummer trained us for.
Right.
And for folks that don't know Joe Strummer, he is a solo artist, but also lead of The Clash. And one of my favorite songs by The Clash is Lost in a Supermarket. And I think that says a lot. All right, it is getting time where we need to do a wrap. I thank everybody who's listening. I'm seeing some more comments come in here from David, but there's a weird UI problem. Good feedback. The feedback was about how we're running the conversation and timing, and I still don't quite have the hang of Zoom. Like, how long do I go? How long do I chime in? And then with Zoom, with the flipping of you and Joe, I'm looking into some other technologies that might help that.
That's good. You're upgrading with every episode.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. And thank you for the recommendation and advice. I love that, and it's all about perfecting the opportunity, and this is episode 30, so I am still learning every single week this new medium. So please feel free to comment and send me messages offline, and then I can apply those to future episodes. Well, thank you so much for being on the show and, engaging in this conversation. I want to thank Joe for showing up every week to provide his sagely advice and perspective and just support of being there. Greatly appreciated. And April, everybody check out ContainHer on Bandcamp. And there is some other videos on YouTube. Check those out. And, I'm thinking with all these episodes, this episode had no technical flaws. It may have been the first one that had no technical failure.
Hey.
So it has been hard to build up an audience because every episode has had some crazy issue. So I'm thinking in the new year, what we're going to do is maybe revisit these and start new episodes, take all that we've learned, and have guests back on for follow-ups. And we'd love to have you on that. And also, this gets recorded up to YouTube. And if you're like, hey, there's some content in this episode I could use for my own promotion, I can get you the file and you can edit it however you want. Obviously, YouTube will monetize this video based on your music being in it. So that's there. And so I look forward to... this is the thing I keep forgetting to ask. What is your boutique?
Oh, it's Petite Galleria in San Jose. It's a tiny boutique composed of over 81 Bay Area artists and some from outside of the Bay Area. And I mostly sell jewelry, original art, gift cards, lotions and soaps, teas, and artisanal award-winning chocolate. So Petite Galleria. I'm working on upgrading the website, but you can check it out now if you like. It's not very good right now because I was used to it being a brick and mortar boutique, but I'm making that better as I go. And it's petitegalleria.com, and you can order things if you like.
Cool.
And
and you're recovering from the not being able to have a brick and mortar and reinventing yourself online.
Yes. So basically, my brick and mortar is known for being probably the smallest boutique you'll ever find. It's the size of a closet, but it's well done. And so now I've filed for the city of San Jose's parklet program. I'm waiting to hear from Department of Transportation as to whether or not I can set up a parklet, which is it's a new program where you can actually take up parking spots outside of your shop and put little road barriers and have a semi-regular kind of thing there. So I will hopefully be able to open in real life, in some respect, and also investing in. Have you heard of those microclimate helmets? So if you ever see me out there, I'll be like a little astronaut.
So you'll come out of your little closet shop to the outside area in a space helmet.
Yeah, and then I will be able to talk to people without backing up from them, because a lot of times people with masks will get too close to me, and I don't like the social interaction where I have to back up. So I think with the helmet, I won't make people feel weird, except that thinking that I'm weird.
We're going to go from Americans trying to get used to the idea of having masks on to having space helmets on.
I think it's going to be great, though. I think the space helmet, it has a little motor in it, and it pumps fresh air so it doesn't get steamy or anything, and it makes things really safe. And I think you could even hug people and stuff with the space helmet on. So,
yeah. and
very Robert Heinlein.
I don't mind sci-fi.
And where is your shop located?
It's in San Jose's Japantown. It's right by the Shiseido shop. It's right there on the main street, really, really tiny. And you can find it by looking for a little hanging sign that has a tortoise on it, because my mascot is a tortoise.
Cool. Well, thank you again for being on the show. Good luck to the shop reboot. And one more time for folks, the online URL is? It's
petitegalleria.com, and I spell petite, P-E-T-I-T-E, and then Galleria.com. And if you want to get some unique gifts, I would say check back in November, because the website will be fully fledged by then, but you can always check it out now. You'll still find things.
Cool. Thank you so much for that. And again, one last time, check out ContainHer, the word contain, then the word H-E-R, her, on Bandcamp. Support your artists. If you got a nickel that you can spare, please do put it in the tip jar for your artists, and do attend live shows. What was that?
Oh, I will also say that I do have singles up on Bandcamp that are pay what you will. So even if you can't afford them, you're welcome to download them. And basically, I have this little incentive that anyone that pitches in, once I get to $1,000 on the single, I'll put it on all streaming platforms. So if you want to help me with that, you can.
And if you want to support live music and video production, check out the DNA Lounge website and tune into StarCraft for some great retro 80s plus current crazy fun art stuff. All right. Well, have a great evening, and see you out there on online world. Joe, you take care of yourself over in Berkeley. Don't get too exhausted from all the heat you're enjoying while I'm in Seattle putting on my fourth layer of clothes. And we will catch each other next week. Ciao,
awesome.
Everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, everybody, for watching Sunday Live and supporting the show. Do feel free to reach out with me with comments. We are on our 30th episode. I think we finally have the technology stable, so we're not having episodes collapse 15 minutes in, or find out 5 minutes in no one can hear the guest, or some other weird problem. The technology has been definitely a learning curve for me. I'm also learning as a presenter. I have a history of doing live training. This is my first time doing a streaming presentation show, and I am learning each week something new, and I love to get feedback. So thank you for everybody who's given comments and feedback. It only makes the show stronger, and my presentation better, so I can bring you artists from out the West Coast that you might not otherwise have heard of, and share them with you. Have a good week. Stay safe and be well. If you're interested in finding out more about my music and art, you can follow me on Facebook, Caleb Duart, with a silent E at the end. You can follow my bands on Bandcamp, Caleb, Audiotourist, or Cuirbleu, spelled C-U-I-R-B-L-E-U. We also have official channels on YouTube with music videos and concert footage. I am going through the back catalog of High 8 tapes and digitizing them and uploading new content on a semi-regular basis. Appreciate all the views. Again, take care, and we'll see you next week.